The rain pounded the streets of Brooklyn, relentless, soaking everything in its path. In the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, a boy crouched under a tattered awning, his thin frame shivering, eyes hollow with hunger. That boy, barely 16, was Ethan, and his life was about to collide with a stranger who would change it forever. In 2015, New York City was a paradox of glittering wealth and invisible despair. Ethan Carter, a runaway from a small town in Ohio, had fled a home where his truth, his identity as a gay teenager, was met with rejection. His parents' words still burned, "You're no son of ours." Penniless and alone, he scavenged for scraps in alleyways behind restaurants, his dreams buried under the weight of survival. On this particular night, the scent of garlic and rosemary wafted from a small bistro, pulling him like a lifeline. Inside the bistro, La Bella Vita, Julian Torres, a 26-year-old chef with a warm smile and a knack for turning simple ingredients into magic, was finishing a long shift. Julian, openly gay and fiercely proud, had built a life in New York after leaving his conservative family in Texas. His dark eyes caught a shadow outside the back door. A boy, drenched and trembling, digging through the trash. Something in Julian stirred. He'd seen too many kids like this, discarded by a world that didn't care. Without a second thought, he grabbed a plate of leftover pasta and a blanket from the break room. "Hey!" Julian called softly, stepping into the rain. Ethan froze, clutching a soggy bread crust, his blue eyes wide with fear. "I'm not gonna hurt you. You hungry?" Julian held out the plate, steam rising from the warm food. Ethan hesitated, then nodded, taking the plate with shaking hands. That night, Julian didn't just feed Ethan's body. He fed his hope, sitting with him under the awning, sharing stories of his own struggles as a gay man finding his place in the world. For weeks, Ethan returned to the alley, and Julian was always there with a meal and a kind word. They talked about music, dreams, and the freedom to be themselves. Julian learned Ethan loved to draw, sketching intricate cityscapes on napkins. Ethan learned Julian had a passion for teaching others to cook, a dream he hoped to pursue one day. Slowly, trust bloomed in the cracks of their shared vulnerability. But one night, Ethan didn't show. Days turned to weeks, and Julian's heart sank, fearing the city had swallowed him whole. Ethan hadn't vanished by choice. A shelter worker had spotted him and offered a bed at a youth center in Manhattan. It was a chance to rebuild, but it meant leaving Brooklyn and Julian behind. At the center, Ethan found safety, a GED program, and a counselor who helped him process his past. He threw himself into art, his sketches becoming a way to reclaim his voice. Yet, he never forgot the chef who saw him when he was invisible. Julian's kindness was a spark that kept him going, a reminder that someone, somewhere, cared. Years passed. Ethan, now 21, had earned a scholarship to a community college, studying graphic design. He worked part-time at a cafe, saving every penny for a future he could barely imagine as a homeless teen. But the memory of Julian lingered, a quiet ache. He wanted to find him, to say thank you, to show him he'd made it. One day, scrolling through social media, Ethan stumbled across a post about La Bella Vita's new location in Manhattan. Julian's name was mentioned, now a celebrated chef with a growing following. Ethan's heart raced. He had to see him. Meanwhile, Julian's life had evolved. At 32, he was no longer just a chef but a mentor, running cooking classes for at-risk youth. His bistro had become a haven for the community, a place where everyone was welcome. Yet, his personal life felt incomplete. Past relationships had faltered under the weight of his demanding career, and though he was surrounded by people, loneliness crept in. He often thought of Ethan, wondering where life had taken him, hoping he was safe. Ethan stood outside La Bella Vita's new location, a sleek space with warm lights and a buzzing crowd. His palms were sweaty, clutching a sketchbook filled with drawings inspired by their talks years ago. He'd spent days crafting a letter, pouring his gratitude onto the page, but now, face to face with the moment, doubt gnawed at him. Would Julian even remember him? Steeling himself, Ethan stepped inside. "Ethan?" Julian's voice cut through the hum of the restaurant. He stood behind the counter, his chef's jacket slightly wrinkled, his eyes wide with recognition. Ethan's breath caught. Julian's face hadn't changed. Still kind, still warm, but now tinged with something deeper, a quiet strength. They stared, time collapsing the years between them. "You're okay?" Julian whispered, crossing the room in 3 strides to pull Ethan into a hug. They talked for hours that night, the restaurant emptying around them. Ethan shared his journey, how Julian's meals had been more than food, how they'd given him the courage to keep going. Julian listened, his heart swelling with pride and something else, something new. Ethan's curls, now tamed, framed a face that had grown into its strength, his blue eyes bright with purpose. Julian felt a pull, a spark he hadn't expected. Was it admiration or something more? Their reunion marked a turning point. Ethan started visiting the bistro regularly, helping with small tasks, sketching designs for the menu. Their connection deepened, built on shared laughter and late-night conversations. Julian taught Ethan to cook, their hands brushing over cutting boards, their smiles lingering. But neither spoke of the growing tension, the unspoken feelings simmering beneath their friendship. Ethan, still healing from his past, feared rejection. Julian, wary of crossing boundaries, held back. One evening, as they chopped vegetables side by side, Ethan's hand grazed Julian's. The air stilled. Ethan looked up, his voice barely a whisper. "Julian, I think I'm falling for you." Julian froze, his heart pounding. He'd felt it too, but the weight of their history, his role as a mentor, their age difference, made him hesitate. "Ethan," he said softly, "you mean so much to me, but we need to be sure." The words hung between them, fragile and electric. Ethan's confession had cracked open a door neither could close, and the kitchen of La Bella Vita became a crucible for their emotions. Julian, torn between caution and desire, suggested they take things slow, a decision that both comforted and tormented them. Over the next few months, their bond grew in quiet moments, shared glances during busy shifts, Ethan's sketches decorating the bistro's walls, Julian's gentle teasing as he taught Ethan to perfect a bechamel sauce. They were careful, treading the line between friendship and something deeper. Ethan, now 22, was blossoming, his confidence growing as he balanced college and work. Julian, at 33, found himself captivated by Ethan's resilience, his humor, his quiet strength. Yet doubts lingered. Julian worried about the power imbalance, the years between them, and whether Ethan's feelings were born of gratitude rather than love. New York seasons shifted, and with them, the city's pulse. The bistro thrived, but Julian faced pressure from investors to expand, pulling him away from Ethan. One night, a heated argument erupted when Ethan overheard Julian discussing a potential move to Chicago for a new restaurant. "You're leaving?" Ethan asked, his voice raw. Julian, exhausted, snapped, "It's just business, Ethan. I'm not abandoning you." The words stung, echoing Ethan's old fears of being left behind. He stormed out, leaving Julian staring at an empty doorway, regret heavy in his chest. Days passed in silence. Ethan threw himself into his art, sketching furiously, his work growing darker, more chaotic. Julian, back at the bistro, cooked with mechanical precision. His usual spark dimmed. He missed Ethan's laugh, his presence, the way he made the kitchen feel alive. Finally, Julian showed up at Ethan's tiny apartment, a takeout bag in hand. "I'm sorry," he said, voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you." Ethan's eyes softened, and they talked until dawn, laying bare their fears. They agreed to try to build something real no matter the risks. Their relationship bloomed, tentative at first, then fierce. They explored New York together, late-night walks through Central Park, stolen kisses in quiet bookstores, shared dreams over coffee. Ethan introduced Julian to his college friends, a diverse group who welcomed Julian with open arms. Julian brought Ethan to community events at the bistro, where they fed the homeless, a nod to their shared past. Their love was a quiet rebellion against a world that often judged them, a testament to the power of connection. But challenges loomed. Ethan's art was gaining attention, and a gallery offered him a solo exhibition. A chance to shine, but it meant long hours away from Julian. Meanwhile, Julian's investors pushed harder, demanding he commit to the Chicago deal. The tension resurfaced, this time laced with deeper stakes. One night, after a long day, Ethan found Julian staring at a contract, his face lined with stress. "If you go," Ethan said quietly, "I'll support you, but I'm scared." Julian reached for his hand. "I'm not going anywhere without you," he promised. Their commitment was tested when Ethan's estranged parents reached out. They'd seen his art online and wanted to reconnect. Ethan, torn between hope and pain, agreed to meet them in Ohio. Julian insisted on coming, sensing Ethan's need for support. The visit was a disaster. His parents, still unaccepting, criticized his life, his art, his relationship with Julian. Ethan stood his ground, his voice steady. "I'm happy. I'm loved. That's enough." Julian's heart swelled with pride, but the encounter left Ethan shaken, questioning whether he'd ever truly belong. Back in New York, Julian doubled down on making Ethan feel safe. He proposed they move in together, a leap that terrified them both. Ethan agreed, and they found a cozy apartment in Queens, filling it with art, cookbooks, and memories. Their life together was imperfect but real. Burnt dinners, late-night arguments, and mornings tangled in each other's arms. Yet, the Chicago offer lingered, a shadow over their happiness. Julian had to decide: stay with Ethan and the life they were building, or chase a career-defining opportunity. The decision weighed on Julian like a storm cloud. Chicago promised prestige, a chance to cement his name in the culinary world, but it meant uprooting the life he and Ethan were weaving together. At 34, Julian felt the pressure of time, of proving himself. Ethan, now 23, was thriving. His gallery show had been a success, his art featured in a local magazine. But success brought its own strain, pulling them in different directions. One evening, in their cramped Queens apartment, Julian cooked Ethan's favorite, lemon herb chicken, hoping to soften the conversation. "I turned down Chicago," he said, setting the plates down. Ethan's fork froze midair. "Why?" he asked, his voice a mix of relief and guilt. Julian sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Because you're my home, Ethan. I'd rather build something here with you than chase fame alone." Ethan's eyes glistened, but he pushed back. "I don't want to hold you back, Julian. You deserve everything." The argument that followed was raw, exposing their deepest fears. Ethan worried he was a burden, tethering Julian to a life of what-ifs. Julian admitted he feared losing Ethan, the one person who made him feel whole. They sat in silence, the weight of their love both an anchor and a lifeline. Finally, Ethan reached for Julian's hand. "We'll figure it out together," he said. It wasn't a solution, but it was a promise. Their life settled into a rhythm, a delicate balance of work, art, and love. Ethan started teaching art classes at the youth center where he'd once stayed, giving back to kids like the boy he used to be. Julian expanded his cooking classes, turning La Bella Vita into a community hub. They hosted potlucks, inviting friends, co-workers, and strangers alike, their apartment filled with laughter and warmth. But the world outside wasn't always kind. Anti-LGBT sentiment flared in the news, and a hateful comment scrawled on the bistro's window left Julian shaken. Ethan, ever resilient, painted over it with a vibrant mural, a declaration of their defiance. Their love grew stronger, but life tested them in new ways. Julian's mother, Maria, reached out after years of silence. She was coming to New York and wanted to meet Ethan. Julian, wary of her past disapproval, hesitated but agreed. The meeting was tense. Maria's attempts at warmth clashed with her lingering discomfort. Ethan, polite but guarded, shared his art, hoping to bridge the gap. To Julian's surprise, Maria softened, moved by Ethan's talent and their obvious love. "I don't understand everything," she admitted, "but I see how happy you are." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start. Meanwhile, Ethan's career soared. A gallery in Los Angeles offered him a residency, a dream opportunity that would take him across the country for 6 months. The news hit Julian like a punch. He was proud but terrified. 6 months apart felt like an eternity. Ethan, sensing Julian's fear, suggested they make a plan. Regular visits, video calls, a shared future to come back to. "This isn't goodbye," Ethan said, kissing Julian softly. "It's just a chapter." The night before Ethan left, they sat on their balcony, the city humming below. Julian gave Ethan a small notebook, filled with recipes and notes of encouragement. Ethan gave Julian a sketch, a portrait of them laughing together in the bistro's kitchen. They held each other, the weight of the distance ahead tempered by their trust. Ethan's departure was tearful but hopeful, a testament to their strength. While Ethan was in LA, Julian threw himself into the bistro, but the loneliness crept in. He found solace in mentoring a new group of kids, one of whom, a shy 15-year-old named Mia, reminded him of Ethan. Mia, struggling with her identity, opened up to Julian, and he shared his story, hoping to give her the courage he'd once given Ethan. It was a reminder of why he stayed, why he fought for this life. Ethan's time in LA was a whirlwind of creativity and growth, but the distance tested their relationship. Late-night calls were lifelines, but static and time zones couldn't replace Julian's warmth. Ethan poured his longing into his art, creating a series of paintings inspired by their love. Vibrant, raw, and deeply personal. The gallery buzzed with praise, but Ethan's heart was in New York with Julian. Back in Queens, Julian faced his own challenges. The bistro was thriving, but a rival restaurant opened nearby, siphoning customers. Julian worked longer hours, his stress mounting. He missed Ethan's calming presence, his ability to make even the hardest days feel lighter. One night, after a grueling shift, Julian found a letter from Ethan tucked in his recipe book. "You're my anchor," Ethan wrote. "I'm coming home soon." Julian clutched the letter, tears blurring the words, and knew they'd make it through. Ethan's return was a burst of light. He arrived at La Bella Vita unannounced, his curls wild, his smile brighter than ever. Julian dropped his spatula, pulling Ethan into a kiss that silenced the room. The staff cheered, and for a moment the world was just them. Ethan's LA success brought opportunities. A potential art show in New York, a chance to stay close. But it also brought pressure. Galleries wanted more of his time, and Julian's bistro demanded his. They vowed to support each other, but the strain of balancing dreams and love was undeniable. One evening, as they walked through Central Park, Ethan stopped by a familiar bench, the one where they'd first admitted their feelings. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady but nervous. "I want us to build something permanent. Not just an apartment, but a life." Julian's heart raced. Was this a proposal? Ethan laughed, reading his expression. "Not yet," he teased. "But soon. I want us to be ready." Their commitment deepened, but the world threw new hurdles. A local politician's anti-LGBT rhetoric sparked protests, and the bistro became a target for vandalism. Julian and Ethan stood together, cleaning graffiti, hosting community forums, turning pain into action. Their resilience inspired others, and La Bella Vita became a symbol of resistance and love. Ethan's art adorned the walls, each piece a story of survival, while Julian's food nourished the community that rallied around them. As their third anniversary approached, Ethan began acting strangely. Secretive phone calls, late-night sketches he wouldn't show Julian. Julian, ever the worrier, feared the worst. Was Ethan pulling away? One night, Ethan handed Julian an envelope, his hands trembling. "Open it," he said. Inside was an invitation to a wedding, addressed to Julian. "You're invited," Ethan grinned. "But there's a twist." Julian's brow furrowed. "Whose wedding?" he asked. Ethan's eyes sparkled. "Ours, if you'll have me." Julian's breath caught. Ethan had planned a surprise wedding, a celebration of their journey, to be held at La Bella Vita. The twist? Ethan had invited every person who'd shaped their lives. The youth center staff, Julian's mother, Ethan's college friends, even Mia, the teen Julian mentored. It was a testament to their community, their love, their survival. Julian pulled Ethan close, whispering, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The days leading to the wedding were a whirlwind of joy and chaos. La Bella Vita transformed into a venue of love, draped in fairy lights and Ethan's art. Julian crafted a menu that told their story, dishes inspired by their first meal, their late-night talks, their shared dreams. Ethan, meanwhile, designed invitations and decorations, each detail a nod to their journey. Their friends rallied, turning the bistro into a space that felt like home. The wedding day dawned crisp and clear, a perfect New York autumn morning. Julian, 35, stood in his chef's jacket, tailored for the occasion, his dark hair neatly combed. Ethan, 25, wore a simple suit, his blonde curls catching the sunlight. They stood before their community, hands clasped, vows raw and honest. "You saw me when I was invisible," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "You gave me a home." Julian's eyes glistened. "You made me believe in love again," he replied. "You're my everything." The ceremony was intimate, filled with laughter, tears, and music. Mia read a poem she'd written, her voice strong, a far cry from the shy girl Julian had met. Maria, Julian's mother, offered a hesitant but heartfelt toast, her journey toward acceptance visible in her trembling hands. The youth center staff, who'd helped Ethan rebuild, danced alongside college friends and bistro regulars. The twist, Ethan's surprise, was the community they'd built, a family forged not by blood but by love. As they cut the cake, a lemon rosemary creation Julian had perfected, they fed each other, laughing through tears. The night ended with them dancing under the stars, the city skyline a quiet witness to their joy. But the true ending wasn't the wedding. It was the life they continued to build, messy, beautiful, real. Years later, La Bella Vita became a beacon for others. Julian and Ethan expanded the bistro, opening a second location dedicated to feeding the homeless, teaching kids to cook, and showcasing art from marginalized voices. Ethan's paintings hung in galleries, each one a love letter to Julian, to their story. They faced setbacks, economic struggles, societal prejudice, but their love was a constant, a fire that never dimmed. One evening, as they sat on their bench in Central Park, now marked with a small plaque reading, "Love Finds a Way," Ethan sketched Julian's face, lines of age just beginning to show. "We made it," Ethan said softly. Julian kissed his forehead. "We're still making it," he replied. Their story wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving, about building a world where love, in all its forms, could flourish. And in that moment, under the autumn leaves, they knew they'd found their forever.